Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It is finally September, finally fall, so I have just been preparing myself to welcome in this autumnal season, and today I wanted to bring to you some recommendations, some ideas on how to embrace this season, certainly ways that I'm embracing it, and maybe some inspiration for you as well. I of course have books to recommend to you. I will always be here to talk about books with you, but I also want to recommend some movies, TV shows, even some stylistic choices that I am personally going with to welcome in the fall season. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Now before we even get into the books, I want to talk a little bit about autumnal style because there are just so many different ways to do this, and I'm really intrigued by all of the different aesthetics. I love all of them. I don't think there is a single bad fall aesthetic, either in terms of decoration or personal style. Whatever you choose to do, you, go for it. If you are embracing fall, then you're making the right choice. It doesn't matter what the aesthetic is. I just find them all so intriguing, and I have tried on several of them over the years. I have done the dark academia thing, especially living in Glasgow and attending a medieval university. I have definitely leaned a bit into dark academia in more recent years. I've also kind of touched on the whole Christian girl fall thing. I mean, I'm from the Northeast. The fall and winter wardrobe uniform when I was growing up was leggings, Ugg boots, and a North Face, and I definitely subscribed to that type of style, although I did not own Ugg boots or a North Face, but I improvised. This year I am kind of incorporating some of those dark academia pieces, although I'm kind of leaning away from the Gothic of it all. Kind of drawing in some preppy elements, leaning into kind of a bit of a cozier, more Wes Anderson girl fall. Definitely want to be cozy and feeling very nostalgic about autumn as well this year. So I'm kind of leaning into almost a vintage nostalgic vibe. Basically, I want to just look like I walked off the set of Hocus Pocus, like Allison Dennison vibes. That's what we're going for with the personal style this year. Just like chill, cozy, definitely like autumnal in nature, but not necessarily like full on in your face autumnal. I'm more leaning on color, warm creams, burnt oranges, vibrant reds, and the same can definitely be said for my decor style, although I'm not actually in a place in my life right now to be accumulating a whole lot, so decoration for the fall season isn't really happening, although I will be decorating for Halloween. But yeah, just kind of leaning more into color rather than anything else for the autumnal style. For the books, I have 8 books to talk to you about today, split up by different like genres and vibes. 4 of them are books that I have already read and I have, positive experiences with, books that I would recommend to you. 4 of them are actually part of my autumn TBR. They're books that I personally am looking forward to reading this year. As with the whole dark academia style, I do very much gravitate towards dark academia literature and more Gothic elements at this time of year. So think like Jane Eyre, Frankenstein, If We Were Villains, that kind of Gothic atmosphere. The book I would recommend for this vibe is Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. I read this last year. This is the story of a group of girls, a club called the Plain Bad Heroine Society at the Brookhant School for Girls, who all start turning up dead in the early 1900s at this school. The story is told through 3 lenses, so we've got the immediate aftermath of these deaths and what actually happens at the school after these deaths. We've got the novelization of this story because a young breakout novelist has taken this story and written it into a book. And then third, we have the filming of the movie adaptation of the book of the story of the Plain Bad Heroine Society. So we have all 3 of these storylines kind of merging together. The Gothic book that I personally am looking forward to reading this year is Dracul by Dacre Stoker and J.D. Barker. So Dacre Stoker is the great, however many greats it is, grandson of Bram Stoker, who wrote the original Dracula. Dracul is apparently inspired by the notes left behind by Bram Stoker and all of his inspiration for his classic Gothic novel, Dracula. I have been dying to read this book for about 2 years now, ever since it came out. I read Dracula in 2020 in anticipation of reading this book, but I've just never been able to get my hands on a library copy, but I finally have one now. So I'm incredibly excited to read this. I really enjoyed Dracula when I read it, and so very much looking forward to reading Dracul. The next genre that I gravitate towards at this time of year is of course going to be horror and thriller, that sort of blanket creepy vibe. My personal recommendation is going to be The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is probably my favorite horror novel that I've ever read. It follows 4 friends who were out hunt. This follows 4 American Indian men. They are all friends and they went on a hunting trip together, maybe in a place where they kind of shouldn't have been necessarily, and something went wrong. 10 years later, after this hunting trip, they've all kind of gone their separate ways, but they're all still being haunted by this thing that went wrong on that hunting trip, and it's not just haunting them, it's also hunting them. Very supernatural, very creepy, very horrific. There's some body horror elements as well, which, like, if I'm reaching for horror, I want my skin to crawl, and this book definitely did that. I highly recommend pretty much anything that Stephen Graham Jones does. I love his work, but the horror novel that I am looking forward to reading this year is Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno-Garcia. My library hold actually just came in, so very stoked to read it. Like Dracul, I have been dying to read Mexican Gothic for so long, and it's just so popular that I can never get my hands on it. This is a book about a young woman who gets a frantic letter from her newly married cousin asking her to come to her house, this grand estate where she's now living, and save her from this mysterious demise, mysterious doom. The premise kind of sounds like Rebecca, if the narrator in Rebecca had had someone to call on when things started to go wrong. I've heard fantastic things. I've heard body horror, which I'm kind of looking forward to because, again, the skin crawling, I'm looking for it. The next thing that I personally reach for at this time of year is always going to be mystery, so think like Agatha Christie, the Truly Devious series. I love the Truly Devious series. But my recommendation for you today is going to be The Maid by Nita Prose. This follows a young woman called Molly who happens to be a maid at a very fancy, prestigious, high-end hotel. Molly finds herself becoming the prime suspect in a murder when she discovers the dead body of a really high-profile guest alone in his room. It's a locked door mystery, it's very quirky, and it's never explicitly stated, but Molly is very much coded as being neurodivergent, so if you're looking for neurodivergent recommendations or representation in your reading, I would highly recommend The Maid. Personally, I'm really looking forward to reading The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. This follows a group of 4 friends, all in their 70s, who all get together once a week and kind of try to solve unsolved murders, kind of as a hobby more than anything else. They're just the true crime girlies of their retirement village until a true crime actually happens in their retirement village. There is this grisly murder and the 4 of them decide to team up and try to catch the killer. It's giving grandma core, it's giving quirky murder mystery, it's kind of giving Wes Anderson, if I'm being completely honest. Everything about this sounds like a Wes Anderson movie. So I'm really looking forward to reading this. I'm actually potentially going to be buddy reading this. I have a few friends who also want to get to this season, so really looking forward to chatting with them about this story as well. And lastly, almost as an extension of these quirky murder mysteries that I love so much, is just the cozy sweetness of fall. You know, you've got Halloween, you've got your tricks, but you've also got your treats. And a really sweet autumnal read that I would love to recommend to you is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This follows a lawyer named Wallace, very powerful, prominent lawyer, also well-known asshat, bit of a Dick. Wallace is perturbed one day to find himself at his own funeral because he's died. After the funeral, Wallace follows a reaper to this tea shop kind of out in the middle of nowhere where he meets Hugo. Hugo is a ferryman, and it's his job to take the souls of the newly departed and guide them into the afterlife. Wallace isn't quite ready to die yet, so he decides to just hang out with Hugo at the tea shop for a week, and during that time he starts to kind of come to understand and realize all of the things that he missed out on in life and all of the things that are really important, and maybe even starts to fall in love. Along that same vein, the book that I am looking forward to reading this fall is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This book follows a ghostwriter, so she writes books, but she doesn't get any of the credit for it. And she's having some really serious writer's block after a bad breakup, but ends up getting some help from an actual ghost. But not just any ghost, the ghost of her new editor, and I'm pretty sure they fall in love, so I'm not entirely sure how that's gonna work, but I'm excited to check it out. Those are the books I have to recommend to you. Of course, I also have plenty of movies and TV shows that I am itching to get back into this season. I've already mentioned Wes Anderson twice in this video, so it feels only fitting to start with Wes Anderson. I just feel like he is a fall staple in general. Of course, you've got the fantastic Mr. Fox, a very autumnal color palette, as well as Rushmore, which has the dark academia elements of private school, but also like that kind of quirky, very Wes Andersonian vibe to it, which I love. Even Moonrise Kingdom kind of feels like a farewell to summer. It's got kind of a more autumnal, a warmer yellow color palette to it. And there's something I'm really looking forward to, which is not actually a Wes Anderson movie, but I'm really looking forward to the new murder mystery See How They Run, which is coming out later this month. This is set in 1950s London. It's a murder mystery surrounding a stage show or movie production of Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap, which, sidebar, now I want to read The Mousetrap. Another movie which I don't see mentioned a whole lot in these like autumn starter pack recommendation videos is Kiki's Delivery Service. And this doesn't really feel like a classic autumnal movie, but it's centered on a 13-year-old witch. Of course it's for the fall. Kiki's Delivery Service is a Studio Ghibli movie all about a 13-year-old witch who has to leave home to start her witch training. While she's away, she starts this business where she delivers packages for people on her magic broom. It's so sweet. It's so wholesome and comforting. Like Moonrise Kingdom, this kind of feels like a good send-off to summer more than an actual like deep fall autumnal watch. It's kind of like a farewell to summer. I loved this movie so much growing up, and I actually watched it back for the first time in years the other day, and it was perfect. It was just what I needed. Something else that I grew up watching and also haven't seen mentioned a whole lot on these types of videos is Bewitched, the TV show. If you haven't heard of Bewitched, let me just put you onto this real quick. Bewitched is a sitcom from the 1960s all about a witch named Samantha who is married to a mortal man, and the whole premise of the show is that she's not really supposed to be doing magic because it kind of just makes his life harder, but she just can't help it. She wiggles her nose. I don't even think I can do it like that. I just scrunch up my face. I can't do it, but she wiggles her nose, and that's how you know she's about to do magic. I, again, grew up watching this when everybody else, oh god, when everybody else was watching Avatar: The Last Airbender or like whatever the hell else was on Nickelodeon on a Saturday morning, I was watching Bewitched and also the original Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo Where Are You from the 1960s. Maybe that's why fall feels nostalgic. I'm sure there are plenty of other reasons, but those are my like two go-to autumnal shows. Everybody else gravitates towards like, what's it called? Over the Garden Wall. I've never seen Over the Garden Wall all the way through. I go for the original Scooby-Doo and Bewitched. Those are my autumn watches, as well as, of course, now Stranger Things and the entire Halloweentown saga. You know, your classics, Hocus Pocus and all that jazz. I'm also very excited for the new Hocus Pocus movie that's coming out this year. Cannot wait for it. You know, your autumn staples. And lastly, I want to talk about the food that I'm excited for because goddamn, I love autumnal food. I personally am not a pumpkin spice latte girly just because I don't like coffee and pumpkin together. It's weird. I don't like it. If that's your thing, you go for it. It's not for me. But I do love a good pumpkin pie, and I've actually promised my flatmate that I will make pumpkin pie this year. She had pumpkin pie for the first time last year and loved it so much, so I've promised to make another one. But last year, most of my pumpkin went into pumpkin risotto, and I'm so excited to be doing more pumpkin risotto this year. It's just so creamy and rich and a little bit sweet because pumpkin is a little bit sweet. I'm pretty much just looking forward to all of those warm, rich kind of comfort foods. A good chili is perfect on a cold fall day, as well as some coddle, which is this Irish stew, potato and sausage stew that I fell in love with while I was living in Ireland, and now it's a staple comfort food for me. Something else that I want to do a lot of this year is mini tarte tatins. My flatmate's gonna hate me for that, but if you don't know what a tarte tatin is, it is basically just an open-faced, kind of like an apple pie, apple tart, but instead of slicing the apples, you use halved or quartered apples, par poached in like a caramel sauce, and then you arrange them in your pan, cover them in puff pastry, and once it's baked, you turn it out and you have this lovely caramel apple tart. It's very fresh. The mini ones that I make, I use a muffin tin, so I just plop half an apple in the muffin tin, cover it with the caramel sauce and the puff pastry, and you have this perfect, dainty little, perfect portion size of dessert. And it's very autumnal, and I can see myself making a lot of them this year. So those are my fall recommendations for you. I hope this video has given you a little bit of inspiration on how you too can embrace this season. If you have any autumnal recommendations of your own, be it for books, movies, music, I have a vintage Halloween playlist that I can share, which I personally really love. Again, with the whole nostalgic kind of retro vibe for the fall, very much my deal. Feel free to chat to me in the comments if you have anything to add to this. I would love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell to see when I post new videos. I love you guys so much, and until next time, peace out, Brussels sprouts.